And we are live once again on the Greyhorn Pagans Podcast, part 3 on giants. Part 2 has been over a year ago. I checked it. It was halfway through May, or like the end of May of last year, when we did our part 2. Not that we have stopped talking or researching about giants in the meantime. If anything, we only found more. The only the only difference is this time we have a guest with us, Andy from the Deep Share Podcast,
What's
together,
up, guys?
of course, with Thane Joshua, as always. Guys, what's up? Thank you for joining. Thank you for coming.
Love being here, man. Great topic to talk about.
Yeah, man. I started hammering away writing an article, and what I was telling Stein earlier, I wanted to write an article on Substack to kind of use as a PowerPoint for this particular podcast, because we tend to like derail our train of thought like every 32 seconds. So
Yes.
it kind of helps just to guide it back on point. And when I started researching, I wanted to do like two specific aspects of it. And there are two that are not so commonly delved into, but it's two that are like glaring us in the face going, hey, look at me. When you add them in with everything else, it literally just kind of paints a giant picture. And that two things was the Native American side of it and the Odinist or Norse Germanic side of it. Because giants are 60-70% of the Eddas. Odin himself is half Jotun. Loki is half Jotun. There are members of the Aesir that are full Jotun. Scotty. So there's a lot of giants in the whole of the Eddas. You know, in the Bible, there's one or two verses, and they're very specific. You know, but in the Eddas, they lay it out, and you know, they say something very specific in there that shook me the last time I was reading it. And it basically says that there's a certain time of the year that they would have to guard in this point in Asgard where the Bifrost was, because during the winter, an area of the water would freeze over, and from the north, where it was the land of constant winter, in other words, the North Pole or the Arctic Circle, these giants would come raid them. And I mean, it was brutal. So year after year, they would set up these sentinel patrols up at what they called Asgard, the Northgard Bifrost, so that when that bridge formed, there was people there guarding it, because otherwise they were getting overrun by giants. They would get lost up in the countryside, and then they would get stuck there. And they were not easy to deal with, and the last thing they wanted was more giants reproducing in their land. So it got nutty for a while in the Eddas, and then, like I said, with the Native American stuff, man, wow, just wow.
Which connects also to a lot of the weird newspapers that we find entailing giants' bones being discovered in the Americas and stuff like that.
And that's the thing too that like adds validity to it. You have the Native Americans saying, hey, when we came here, there was this ruthless group of giants. Now, some of them refer to them as cannibals. Other groups of Indians said they were literally civil and regal, and like a very regal race of people that had these huge structures from sea to sea, and they had kingdoms all over the place. And they said the Choctaw specifically, when they came out of their, I got the name of it written down, but when they came out of a hole in the earth for the most part, they come out of the Nanin Waya, the mound in Winston County, Mississippi, apparently, is where it's pointed out that they came to the Americas. When they settled there, they came out of a cave for the most part. Those people were already everywhere. So they had to slowly take pieces of territory and claim them as their own, and then they started trading with some of them. But others were not so friendly. So, I mean, we've got mixed bags of stories from them, but then we find the mounds with those giant skeletons in them, and we're like, okay. You know, there's got to be something to it now.
Yeah, you'll hear that often in other stories as well, that the giants come from inner Earth.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you brought up the Choctaw, because I just recently re-listened to an old episode of Sasquatch Chronicles where Wes Germer, the host, was interviewing one of the natives from that tribe and talking about that famous story. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this Bigfoot story, but it took place in like Wyoming. And it wasn't about like a Bigfoot sighting. It was about an all out like army, like a war between these natives and these Sasquatch. I'm not sure if this is lining up with like the same story that you were telling,
Mhm.
but I think it probably would if we looked in, for connecting lines within their mythology or something, or their stories that they've passed down. But it's really, it's pretty crazy. It's about this captain named Joshua LaFleur, and him and a bunch of other men get together to go fight these Sasquatch because a lot of children were going missing from the village after fruits and vegetables and different food stocks were going missing early on. Like more and more and more started getting taken until children were getting taken. And so they expected to be fighting like bandits. And what they found was like marching in line, elders in the back, followed by children, and then warriors up further in the front. These tribes of
Naulo.
these Sasquatch, or whatever the tribe would be calling them. Yeah. And it's an interesting crossover. And I think this is really an important crossover, oddly enough. Sasquatch and all the things that are coming out about our genome now, or the lack thereof, a quote unquote human genome, and how there's many admixture events that occurred in history. And maybe this is all having to do with the same thing. Even the story of the Nephilim, if read as an allegory in some way, it's not even really an allegory. If you're just taking it to, you understand that they were just using different words for
Take
things.
Nephilim and replace it for Denisovan.
That's a great idea. I mean, the idea of giant itself, the etymology goes back to, I think we probably mentioned this last year. I don't know if I mentioned this last year, but I found that the root of this word, even before Gigas in the Greek, meant earthborn.
Yeah.
And that's really important because, I mean, from that, since we talked last time, I've found a number of cases where it seems that giant is interchangeable with the idea of nobility as well. And I'm not saying that takes away from the actual physical stature, but I believe that it was like stature and status went together in a very particular way. And as language evolved and kind of the game of telephone progressed, these, we've built many mythologies around these allegories, of course, but I think it goes back to just the way that they were using the language. In one case, I found, again, Native American evidence. It was, I wish I had the quote right in front of me, but it was basically describing this people, this certain group of people as giants. But it was saying that the reason that they were giants, that they know that they were giants, is because that they were attired. And attired, the real meaning of attired from back when these books were being written, was strictly meaning not just clothing, but attired was fancy nobility clothing, like dressed up, adorned.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the phrase was like, these were a race, these people were a group of giants because they were adorned or attired. And it was just very interesting the way the wording was. And so from there, I started researching that more and more and finding that over and over.
Comanche Chief, Rolling Thunder. He was kind of specific. He said they were regal, that they even bred into the Indian tribes, and that some of the chiefs in the southern states were ancestral to those people. And then you hear the Native American explorers talk about Tuscaloosa and how he was 7.5 feet tall, but Tuscaloosa's dad stood a whole head and shoulders taller than him. So this is just a group of these people who have literally been bred further and further into the Native Americans, and generation after generation, they're getting shorter and shorter,
Yeah, absolutely.
a lot of those tribes were matriarchal, but the leadership, the tribal chieftain would be a patriarch, and that patriarch bred from very specific families. And that's how, for many years, they were very, very large. But then we start to see between the 15 and 1600s, when the explorers were coming, that we got smaller and smaller. Which one?
I just got the phone call. We're having another grandbaby.
Which one, Zach and Jada?
No, Jesse, Travis, they're having another baby.
Holy shit. All right.
Congratulations.
Well,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
news.
Sorry.
That was some
Congratulations.
bad news.
Congrats.
Great news.
I hope it's a boy this time, for Christ's sake.
I would love a little boy. I said the same thing.
All right.
We'll see.
Well, that was good to know. Thank you, hon. I love you.
You're welcome. Sorry, guys.
No worries at all.
Don't
Yeah,
worry, that's
Great to
that's
hear.
great.
That just brighten the mood even more.
For real,
breaking,
dude. That was wild.
breaking news,
So,
people.
and needless to say, I have a son that's 6'6", dude. Like, the kid's freaking massive when he stands next to me. So, like, I wonder if, like, I didn't stunt my growth with cigarettes and alcohol as a teenager, like, how tall would I be right now?
Right? Yeah, I feel that.
I mean, we literally have here in the Netherlands, like, we are already considered the tallest people in the world on average, like male size, like we're about 6 foot average. But
Wow.
there is this guy, I believe we spoke about him on one of our previous ones, Olivier Richters. He is a bodybuilder, actor, model, CEO of Muscle Meat Meals. His nickname is the Dutch Giant. He is 7'2",
Holy shit.
which
That's a big
is
boy.
for our Europeans and other fellow Dutchies. I know there are few, but still, that's 2 meters 18 centimeters. That's a big guy.
Big. That's a big
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, that's a pretty tall dude, no matter where you stand. Nowadays, I mean, look at Greece and Rome. Look at Maximus Thrax, dude. I mean, he's still in the Guinness book as the tallest person. His skeleton, with no discs in the vertebrae or anything like that, is 7'11", laying the way it is reconstructed.
Was that the guy whose wedding ring could function as a bracelet?
A bracelet for his wife. Yeah, he used to wear his wife's bracelets as a thumb ring when they went to battle. And
It's interesting to think about, like, all the old Disney cartoons, the way they always drew some of these characters that were even human, but they were supposed, it's like exaggerated muscle structure, but yet they were like that. Their fingers were like gigantic and their shoulders are huge. Kind of like the Gears of War art style, everybody's massive.
Well, look
Maybe
at what the Native Americans, they specifically say. I mean, in just about every tribe, not just in height, but also in stature, they stood a full, half a body taller than us. So that tells you that they weren't just tall and lanky, that they were also built like freaking Schwarzenegger. So it's a striking story that literally rings all over the Americas, all over Europe. The African tribes tell about it. We found mounds all over the place.
Don't forget China.
Why? Well, now see. All right, now the China thing, I would love to get into that, but because there is so little allowed research there currently, it makes it fucking impossible, man. Since the Longview caves have been uncovered, they have covered up every archaeological find in China. It's been ridiculous.
And it's a losing battle, in my opinion, because eventually people are just going to come knocking. I don't know. But then again,
a couple of years ago, Google Photos comes out and says the Gobi in China. They found all these structures under the sand in the Gobi, right? 2 months later, all of a sudden, Google Maps, you can see where they cut and pasted the same dune picture all over the Gobi.
Jesus.
So it's like, okay, we get it. We get it.
But it's weird too, because it's like there's people that are living in that country that, maybe they don't have the same access. Who knows? You know, if
And
we
that
saw something over Illinois, people would be there in a half an hour, like confirming it or denying it. You know,
look at the Haven or Runestone here in America, right? The Indians on the Trail of Tears, I think it's in like Iowa, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
See, Utah or Iowa. It's in one of them. But the Indians told the Americans when they marched them across the Trail of Tears and said, "Here's your new land." They were like, "Bro, we can't use that land. That land was abandoned a long time ago for a damn good reason. You see what's written on that stone? That's a warning." And I mean, it says Gnomedale, so land of the gnomes. Don't go there. And they didn't. So that's
Land
that's
of
a
the
crazy
gnomes.
thing.
That's interesting. That nomenclature would have been in Native American talk.
It's written in runes on a stone that they declared was there when they arrived, 1,000 years before the colonists.
Oh my God! Fucking
Yeah,
runes.
I have it pulled up here real quick. I'll just share my screen real quick.
Man.
This is just the quick overview to summarizer. A 10 by 12 foot high sandstone. You'll hear that a lot too.
In the middle of Iowa.
Oklahoma.
Okay, even just as weird.
Yeah. There's a whole lot we could say about Oklahoma.
Contains 8 markings believed to have been a boundary border created by Vikings between 600 and 800 AD.
That makes more sense. I didn't realize. I thought it was Native Americans.
First documented in 1923. Excuse my voice, people. My allergies are kicking my ass, so I'm very happy to have these two guys with me.
Now, this is almost a full 1,000 years before the colonists started colonizing, right? The only people in that area at the time were the Native Americans, and they gave the same warning. So, you really got to think about that. There's weird little effers up in the hills there that will kill you, dude. Don't go there.
Well, I love that you brought that up, the little fuckers, because, we got gnomes and fairies and all of this nomenclature that, honestly is kind of like an inversion almost, whether it was an inversion to discredit and demonize, or it was actually, I've learned that a lot of inversion is not necessarily done by the aggressor. It's done by the person trying to conceal their own shit, trying to keep it to themselves or keep it on the lowdown, but kind of code to each other in that way. But yeah, a lot of this is like, instead of these gnomes and elves being these tiny little folk, it's more like they are kind of the ordained kings and queens of prehistory.
And that's another crazy thing. Look at that. Oh God, what explorer was it? Hold on. There was an explorer that came into South America, or no, the Gulf of Mexico, and he found a freaking village. And the village that he ran into, oh God, I got it written down somewhere.
Alonso Alvarez de Pineda. You have it on your Substack.
Yes, this dude comes into a village, and not only are there 8-foot tall people there, there's also a whole race of 4-foot and 3-foot pygmies living right beside him.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that's in 1519, right?
Yeah.
By the 1600s, when we started fully colonizing, when we were like just Spain, France, England, everybody's just sending ships over full of people at that point in time. All of a sudden, something flipped, right? Now, did these peoples just head further into South America? Are they still down in the Amazon somewhere? You know what I mean? Did they go up in the mountains, and this is the hairy man we're seeing up by Alaska and Canada?
That's really the weird disconnect I have, because like I want to connect Sasquatch right to all of this mythology, but then it's so different, because I was saying just the other night on a show that I love hunters telling their Sasquatch stories, because those most of the time the hunters that are telling the stories are just these no shit type of dudes that don't want any attention. They just got to get it out of them and tell somebody, and they're hesitant, and they're, retelling it and shaking while telling it. And they're reporting, an animal, a monster, like a hominid, but definitely animalistic. And it's weird I don't know how that fits into all of our descriptions, because we do have some descriptions of giants being grotesque, right? But then a lot of what we're finding from, hidden under the shadows really is that
they were in with the nobility also.
Right, exactly. And they were beautiful and huge and wise. Like we have the elves. Like there's a lot written by Sir Lawrence Gardner about, the relevance of Lord of the Rings and what J.R.R. Tolkien was really into and what he was saying, and the whole elven race was based on like real Finnish folklore and everything, and so we have these distinguished kings and queens of this, of course, now considered mythological world. But yeah, it's weird. So there's a disconnect there from hairy man, Sasquatch. I mean, of course, if they have to live, if they're chased down and hunted down by our governments or something, maybe they can't shower.
I think the Eddas explained it, dude, and I think the Eddas broke it down perfectly, right?
Okay,
there were giants. There were giants from different regions, right?
Okay.
The ice giants. Okay, let's say you have a group of people that all of a sudden for 1,000 years they're chased out into wilderness, living in the elements. Are they going to develop more body hair over 1,000 years and several generations? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you look at what the Norse. There was ice giants. They were uncivilized. They attacked them. They fed on them. They raided their villages when they were able to get across the Bifrost. So it was their goal to keep them from doing so, right? Mm-hmm. Then you had the giants from the south, the fire giants. Many of them, especially, are described as being jet black, right? Mm. Black as coal, or pitch or tar, right? Now, you have several giants in Norse mythology that are described as being pitch black.
Yeah.
So in Ethiopia, you have giants, literal human giants that are 7-8 feet tall that they're exhuming now.
Right.
So, I mean, what they were seeing was literal. I mean, they were describing giants coming from the north, being light-skinned, red-haired, evil man-eaters. And then he's describing giants coming from the south, battling with them also, right? So there's a definite distinction. There were different tribes of them. There wasn't just a group of giants, period. There were different groups of giants. And now you look at the Denisovans, there were multiple haplogroups of them. There were Asiatic Denisovans, there were American Denisovans. I mean, they're literally finding them everywhere now. Just like the Salutrians and the Clovis, they're finding out that they're not just one regional people, that they were from everywhere. So
I mean, if you just make the presumption that they are giant humans or giant humanoids or whatever, like from the humans, there are different, tribes or whatever, like even in just like, take just Europe, like the Northern Europeans are different from Southern Europeans, yet we're both Europeans, we're both human,
Look at tribes in Peru living right alongside of us right now, still chucking spears at animals and living in thatched huts. People get near them, they chuck spears at them and shoot arrows at them. These tribes haven't been disturbed for over 10,000 years, and they're still existing. Empires have risen, fallen, crashed, burned, been destroyed, battles waged, genocides happened, and these people are just doing their thing.
Yep. Yet somehow at one point or another, they were also affected by this degeneration where they were no longer part of this, or we have a very recessive giant connection at most, right? I mean, none of us are really that. We have a few here and there that are still there, but maybe that's just
climate related.
People bring up the idea that everything has gotten smaller than it used to be, so that might be just a natural part of it. But where do you guys fall in the 25-foot and over giants stuff? What do you guys think about that?
Okay, and again, they break that down in the Eddas, in Greek mythology, and several other mythologies. They were the Titans, the giants before the giants. Since the last ice ages fall and before over the turnings, we have seen Stein, will you bring up the footprint in stone that I put in that article?
Yes.
Is that possible? Dude, in Africa, there is a footprint in stone that is literally 4.5 feet. And you look at it, when this granite was still wet, a foot was pressed into it and it slowly dried.
This one,
right?
Like
You can see
about the size of the dude himself. Let's say he's.
And so, I mean, I'm not to be the boring skeptic, but we have absolute proof and understanding that this has no explanation to even debunk or anything.
They have said if you look at the actual footprint, there are several of them around the earth that they found that are huge footprints that you could tell were literally just chiseled into stone. This one is a footprint that hit granite when it was wet. And then over tens of thousands of years, it dried like that. You can see where the mud was mushed between the toes and curled up at the front of them, like something was running at full speed.
Yeah, this doesn't look carved.
So weird.
Now,
so wild. Well, how tall would that person be? Probably about 20 feet, maybe even bigger.
20 to 25 feet, right? Now, look at Texas, right? There's another picture in there that's got all the skeletons lined up that they found at different mounds. They found an 18-foot skeleton in Texas, man. Now, the width of the shoulders on that thing, the width on its shoulders are just as tall as most people. When they said when it was found, its chest from back to its sternum was 5 feet off the ground. Just the rib cage. Now, that is an absurd find. And it was confirmed by like 2 university archaeologists, right? Then the Smithsonian says, this was somewhere in Texas, but it was at one of the mound sites.
Cool.
It's in the Substack.
I mean, and I want to believe this shit. I just the only reason why I ask is because I've found a number of those some of the articles are awesome and they track, and then others lead to mastodon bones. You know what I mean?
Yes. Or where people had a photo contest to make giant, remains and I've weeded through a lot of them and basically parsed out the ones that do not have newspaper articles validating that some university scientist that was a legitimate scientist. You can go into the university records, find their documents, the whole 9 yards. That's all in there. And the one thing I got to give Ancient Origins credit for is they did a lot of homework with that. When they were fishing those newspaper articles out, and I put them in the sourcing for that article because that's where I got that picture from. And all of those names on there, the cities and the sizes of the skeletons, you can break it down and find the newspaper articles for it. And then the archaeologist or paleontologist that confirmed the bones, and then the Smithsonian finds them.
Right.
So
I don't doubt any of that. Yeah, that's really interesting. So this is a part of the study that I have kind of avoided purposely until I had no other choice, but you're giving me information that's going to fuel that. So I appreciate that. I was always, 12 feet. I can see people 12 feet in our history. When you look at dinosaurs and, grasshoppers and everything during the Ice Age being 3 times its normal size. So maybe even 15 feet people, right? But then
I found the article, what you were talking about. This is from
there you go.
Websites.
Nice. 18 feet fucking tall. So this is really pushing the limits,
Now, look in the article.
Lived 2,800 years ago.
Now, again, in retrospect, that's not that far in the past. There were Clovis civilizations all over the Americas at that point in time. Well, in Central America and across Texas in that area, there were Clovis finds.
The newspaper clipping is from July 1919.
Now, they've done research and found that the Clovis people are the Native Americans' ancestors, right? It's a haplogroup of the Clovis that were literally just here in the Americas at that time. They are the pre-Native Americans, right? Yeah. So they're not the European Clovis because there is an entirely separate haplogroup of European Clovis. Right. So there's a distinction now that these groups were all migratory. That in between these ice ages and cycles, when those land bridges came open, they hauled ass. you know? And at one point, about 26,000 years ago, it appears that they might have just been wide open and there, period. That they had the bridge to cross all the time.
You got to do a part 4 and get our guy, our good buddy, Dr. Narco Longo on to talk about Florida, man, because there's a lot of information in Florida regarding giants and massive anchors being found that are like 8 feet, 10 feet tall.
Bro, that 18-foot skeleton in
Narco.
All right. Florida has got some mounds all over it. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, here's where it gets really effed up. Every area where there's a mound, it's declared a state park.
That makes perfect sense to me. Of course. And why are they state parks? Why are there mounds there? And usually state parks are what line up with cave systems as well. And there's
can't dig at a state park, can't explore, can't do any archaeology without fully allowing the system in. So if you do any exploring at a state park without permission and paperwork and probably a Smithsonian member along with you, you're screwed. You're getting arrested. So, and that's why they did it. Dude, I got a cousin that's an archaeologist, right?
Oh, awesome. That's cool. Let's bring him on.
He's seen some shit that he's not allowed to talk to. And there was a very specific year, and it's something like 2029 or some stupid shit. That like he had signed NDAs. He's not allowed to talk about this until this time, right? So there's some behind the scenes shit that they got like a staged plan on when this is all going to come out.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that over time they're slowly unraveling the narrative so it's not such a big culture shock.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like I really feel like it's all going to unravel in a way where all of us who have spent so much time being like, isn't this amazing? Oh my God, nobody sees it. Nobody reads it. Nobody talks about it. Everyone's going to eventually, it's just going to be like all the conspiracies that come true now where suddenly it's just normalized. So we're going to be like, there's giants. And then suddenly they're going to be like, well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
well, wait a minute. You know, damn it.
The government's been running PSYOP conspiracy theories since its founding, dude.
Absolutely,
I mean,
man. The entire alt media is kind of been we're part of a creation for sure. Unfortunately.
and that's another crazy thing, right? Like people want to reach their ancestral roots. They want to know, you know what I mean? Like everybody that we've run across in the tribe, they really want to get to know where their history came from, where their ancestral roots are, you know? And we're a mixed bag, dude. We're not all Germanic or Norse, you know what I mean? Right. We've got members that are Asian. We've got members that are Indian. So, I mean, there's people all over the Indo-Europe and the Americas that are members of our tribe that, I mean, we have some really in-depth discussions about the crossroads of all these different religions. You know, and we get a major introspect into it just because of that. That's the one thing that humanity's had at a disadvantage for so many years. We've been separate.
Right.
Right. Now that we can all come together and connect these constellation dots, we look up at the picture and go, oh, I see what that is now. Holy shit. You know, it's like one of those things that like we've been able to see it for how long? Because it's in our texts, it's in our books. We have open minds, you know what I mean? We don't fall into a category of dogma where we're just like, nope, that's not the way it is. Even somebody puts it in your face, you know, and you have to kind of stay. I can't just say open-minded because you can become really naive in that way, but skeptically open-minded.
Hell yeah.
You know, suspiciously
open-minded. And your hands in the air, you know?
I think I may have found the anchor that you guys were talking about, or possibly from Flagler Beach.
Yes.
5 foot, weigh between half a ton and a ton.
I mean, that's one. Dr. Narco Longo from Old World, Florida. Go check him out on YouTube if you haven't. He's got lots of slides, lots of pictures of massive anchors that are like
the axes. Have you seen the axes?
Yeah, I have seen some axes. I've seen some swords. Oh. I've even seen muskets that are in. I'm sure there's public reasons for it, like, oh, these were novelties. But it's like, well, what's with these doors that are thousands of years old that are
You find an axe buried in a mound. Now, here's another weird. Have you ever noticed the shellfish and oyster and clam coincidence with the giants?
No.
A lot. Okay, just you'll notice that over time, dude. The Native American tribes, especially the ones in Florida, right? They say that, if you find mounds where there's all these oyster shells and there's a huge mound, there's a giant buried somewhere nearby.
Interesting.
Because they would, for some reason, like cover the entirety of the body in oyster shell, shiny side up, and then bury it.
Wow.
So there's something to that, and I still don't know what the detail is, but it's not just in the 4 Native American mounds. I started finding it in the ones going up New England too, up the coast of the east coast of America. So there's something to that, you know what I mean? And I, like I said, that I still haven't been able to put my finger on.
I can help you out there, maybe. It may be a very loose connection, but I tie all of these giants and these ancient nobilities to the seafaring people, the sea people, the angelic sailors. They own the seas.
The Atlas.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It all we're talking about a massive span of time, and it changed hands and languages changed, and people went here and people went there and mingled, and more admixture, everybody. But they're still all talking about the same thing. And it's these, they own the seas. And even the Phoenicians supposedly owned the Atlantic. It was their territory. There be dragons, dude. There be dragons. They are the fucking snake people. They are the serpent line. They are the dragon bloodlines. There be dragons. It's not just don't go out there because the seas are fucking choppy. No, it's the Phoenicians are out there.
I just got into that one too, the topic of the Phoenicians, because of Baal and El, right? Uh-huh. Did you ever see I wrote an article too about the Balder and Baal and the similarities and all of that, dude. It's staggering when you look at Balder and all of the attributes of him, and then Baal and all of the attributes of him. They're the same God, bro. All in all, the sky god, sun god, beautiful, glorious, most beautiful. The description of them is even ridiculous, down to the fact that their fathers were the creators, their mothers were both associated with sacred groves and trees. It's ridiculous, the tentative connections between the two of them, right?
I gotta here. This is from your Substack. For Proto-European root Bel, white, which would make sense. Baal, fire. If we would link it with, Baal, god of the underworld, demonic being.
That was a Christian thing that happened later on.
Yeah.
What do you do when you want to change a religion? You vilify the old one.
Absolutely. Demons,
right?
Demons.
Exactly. Devils. So what was the god before, Baal, changes to El over a period of about 1,000 years in the Phoenician culture, right? Mm-hmm. And then from El, all of a sudden, it jumps into Judaism like a fucking lightning bolt, dude. All of a sudden, Phoenicians ended and the Jewish faith picked up right there where they left off.
That's what I've been getting into lately. Actually, I've been doing a lot of research about the whole origin of these Indo-Europeans in the Kurgan steppe and the Caucasus Mountains and all that. Mm. And then, of course, I'm into Bach Saga, and this is their story. They talk about after ice time heading east. That was a lot of where the family went, and they're talking about the two oldest families, according to Bach Saga, are the Finns and the Russians, and that these two family lines started it all, and one headed towards the east and the Caucasus, and of course we have the Caucasus Mountains as the place where the Canaanites are.
Shit, that sucks. Okay, mild stutter. Did everybody see that, or was it just me?
No, I didn't see it. Did you guys hear what I?
Yeah.
About the last 3 seconds, everything just froze for me.
Oh, weird. So I'm finding, the Canaanites in the Caucasus Mountains, just as we're finding the Bach Saga story kind of. There's a big gap, of course. We have the Younger Dryas to about 5000 BC, where we're told we're finding barely anything, right? The mainstream archaeology is like, well, we have
middle of the Bronze Age.
In this culture, we got the Bronze Age, where there's not much left of these people. The Brahm people are in Scandinavia. We don't know much about them, but that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Everything explodes in 6000 or 5500 BC.
Look at what happened in the Dark Ages, right? We have 536 AD. It just goes dark for a year. Krakatoa goes off, right? It's out in the middle of the ocean. Not a lot of people are out there to witness the actual volcano going off. All they see is the whole sky go dark, and it stays that way, right? And it happens right in the middle of fall. So it just seems to them like a winter storm came and just never fucking left for an entire year. Their crops dwindle. They get down to the point where they're cracking their animals' bones open, sucking the marrow out of them. And people start to get really unhealthy really fast through that time frame. Now, you think about being alive at a time when human population was at a boom, right? They just started building these chapels in fucking England and all over Europe that were these brick buildings that were, huge fucking buildings, right? All of a sudden, they just stopped because all the laborers died, dude, because nobody but the nobility had anything to eat in their larders. And the nobility slowly died off because eventually, well, guess what happens when you don't have any guards left? The few remaining marauders come in and take your shit. So it was a really savage time for humanity, dude. And you got to think, how many times has that happened? Because that's just the one that we got recorded, right?
Right, exactly.
Now, how many long winters were there back in the time of the early Bronze Age during the Phoenicians and stuff that we just have a really shitty record of?
This ties into so many different themes too. Just the idea of all of us being more noble and stronger and more just everything, dealing with more reality. We always think that like our generation is better off than young kids right now, right? Because, they're living more in the simulation than anybody. We've been living in a simulation for hundreds or thousands of years. As soon as we started breaking away from these old noble ways of doing things throughout the year on probably that 13-month cycle and everything, everything was different.
It was a slow, gradual desensitization of the old ways.
And I think there's a natural progression here too, from cataclysms like the one you mentioned, possible extraterrestrial impact like comets and asteroids and things like that. Michael Tessarian talks about trauma a lot, and I like this idea that we had an absolute traumatic event that occurred to us and basically gave us trauma, gave the human race trauma on a physical level first. And I think after that came with it all the rest of humanity, right? And all of our handing down of narcissism and fear, and just for generations and generations through living through absolute hell, right? And sure, it's been thousands of years, but because of all the hoarding and all the ego and all the awful energy coming out of an original cataclysm, it makes sense. We've evolved this way mentally over time,
Do you know what people
giants, but hey, they haven't really evolved with us, so who knows?
You know what people have the least amount of like social drama and all of that stuff in their lives? They literally have such simple lives that they don't have time to ponder trivial things, because we're the first country in history with America that the fucking citizens are more inclined to die of obesity than starvation.
Yeah, man.
That is an epic fail. Okay, I don't care how you look at it, right? Oh no, we've created this industrial. It's wasteful, right? Why? Why do we have the ability to eat until we barf and then keep eating again? Why would we indulge that? Animals have to die to feed us. You know what I mean? So, like, there's just a whole twist that's happened with the mentality of the Industrial Revolution. We have desensitized people to farming and animals. When you can question people on the streets of where meat comes from that are 15 to 20 years old and they go to the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly.
You really have to question what's going on in the fucking school system, you know?
And the homes.
100%. 100%.
Which I know, which one comes from which. That's kind of what I'm saying about the trauma, right? Sure, we have nefarious groups and institutions, absolutely. But I think that mentality, it doesn't necessarily have to come from some supernatural demonic force. We can call it that, and it still aligns perfectly with the philosophy that these are fucked up people that have handed down fucked up beliefs over generations and generations. Part of it is ruling the world and controlling everything because they're so fucking terrified of themselves. You know, I mean, I hate to give them any credence, but they're fucking human.
No, you're
couldn't give them any
right.
more credence than that. They ain't giants.
Right. Now,
it reminds me of. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. With my absolute shot voice. But it reminds me of someone on Minds said that like ages ago. But the new frost giants, so to speak, are like these tech giants, you know, frosts, because they're so cold-blooded. They don't show emotion.
Keep those servers running in the nice cold air conditioning.
What was the name of that show where the frost giants?
That too, but because they don't care.
Are you talking about the Netflix show Ragnarok?
That's the one. Yes.
See, I was just going to bring them up when I said they ain't giants, because like in the show, the bad guys, they're not gigantic. They're just these dickheads with yellow eyes sometimes when they get mad. And I think that's on purpose. You know, that's written there on purpose. These are not great, magnificent people anymore to worship or anything like that.
Yeah,
but they come from that somehow. But I don't know. It's frustrating.
But these companies are the new frost giants because they're so cold-hearted and like sometimes literally worth the economy of a country.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you start referring to citizens as mouths to feed, it's dehumanizing, you know, and leadership. This is where I think we've taken a left-hand turn and just went 110 miles an hour in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Small towns and villages have always been successful because all of the people are cohesive. You know, when you have a small town or a small village, it only tolerates a certain amount of waste and laziness before it extricates it naturally, right? And it serves its own civil needs, right? Its own social systems. People used to take care of their own elders at home until the day they died. Doctors did house called. It was just done that way. And now we have dehumanized the human experience. You know, we're numbing people with these cities because we've taken the social aspect of governing communities away from the people in society. And once the government is so big that you can no longer look at your local leader in the eyes, there's a problem. You know, and when somebody is worrying about violating laws, they should only need to know the laws in their local area. You should not have to worry about, okay, am I violating a state law, a federal law? You know, like it gets really ridiculous in some areas because you have so much overlap of power.
Yeah, compartmentalization, right? That's kind of the name. That's one of the main tactics that all of these governments use. And in a way, it's kind of like a fractalization, right? It's complication, multiplication, division over and over and over again, making it more and more and more and more and more. It's amazing how many different
black projects.
Like, yeah, it's just like in every aspect of society were fractalized as much as they can possibly do it. Like they will break everything down. It's amazing all the little apps and things that my wife finds, like telling her which, like she's obsessed with like the colors of that go with her skin tone and her eye and all that kind of shit. But there's millions of ways that they'll break down the human experience and tell you, if you're this, then you do this, or if it's always the same old game of putting everybody into their own boxes. And while we've all been screaming to just look outside the box, they've just said, yeah, sure. Yeah. Look outside the box. We've got many other boxes for you. And they've just made the boxes even smaller. I don't know.
A multiverse of boxes.
Dude, that's why I love that new saying, look outside, no box required. Fuck it.
Yeah, no box required. Yeah.
Just get out of the cities, man. Georgina Rose on Twitter the other day. And I was like chatting back at her. She basically said she got out of the city for a little while and just, wow, what an experience, and that's true. God, if you've ever been in a city for a long period of time, or even a neighborhood, not even like a dense populated city, just a basic neighborhood. Yeah. And then you get out away from all of the electrical interference, the lights, right until your cell phone doesn't have service, stop and camp there, right? Yeah, you will have one of the most enlightening experiences of your entire life.
I experienced that today. I went to visit the graves of my grandparents and my brother, all in small town Netherlands in the flower bulb region. Went there on bike, like through the dunes and over the dikes and whatever. And just it made me realize that living in a smaller town, I mean, if you're 10 years old and you move from the big city, then like a smaller town, it absolutely sucks. It's boring. There's nothing to do, because
it seems that way.
Yeah. But now, 31 years old, father of two, myself, I see the value of those smaller towns, of those
that's why they don't want us to have kids, because that's what fucking does it to you.
Yeah.
Not always.
I sat there in my former hometown, the town where my mother was born and raised, just having a beer, just looking around. It was just like, this is nice. This is nice. I didn't value it then, but I most definitely now.
Yeah, like the idea of the relatives being taken care of until their last dying breath in the home and all that. Like, it's such a foreign idea to most of our society now. But man, that was something that happened to me being a father, just, progressing my thoughts into the future and everything. The idea of watching this little boy that I love so much just disappear and go off and live and nothing against living your own life, of course not, but that home feeling of getting us all together as family, that is, it's there's so much trying to fight against that and try to be logical about it because of progressivism or just the way that the world is today. And it's bullshit, because it shouldn't have to take away from that ever. But I think youth, this is an abstract here, but I think youth has kind of taken over. I think that's what the New World Order is, letting youth do whatever the fuck it wants, kind of. I have this idea that it's kind of this old way versus the new way. And this old way is kind of an acceptance of reality in the way that it is. As in, we're not going to build this to do this, to do this, to do this. We're going to take what nature has given us and survive. And I think this was the old way for the most part. This new way is, no. We can do this way faster, way better. And doesn't that sound like the kid to just be racing off and the older one to be like, he'll see in time. He'll see in time. But the thing is, we're building a culture on the ones that are never fucking looking back. And in fact, erasing all of it.
Instant gratification culture, bro. We used to get our gratification from building things and making things and crafting and working, right? Not just by looking at the paycheck at the end of the week and paying the bills, right? But by simply getting it done, by finishing a job, a task. You got a dopamine hit naturally, right? And it took time to do that. Now you can get the same dopamine hit with 10 likes on Twitter. You know what I mean? So why bother carving the intricate bookshelf? It doesn't make sense to me how we've so negatively reverted, and then we look at society and go, fuck, what happened? Well, I mean, you abandoned every principle you had. That's what fucking happened. You know?
This was
You're
easier,
scratching,
man. Like, I got to sit down.
that's the crazy thing. Okay. Our parents, dude, just in America, I can say this. I don't know what the economy is like in the Netherlands, dude, but in America, even when I was just coming up to getting my first job, I'm 42, right? When I was getting my first job, I could work a full-time job and pay the bills at our apartment and a car payment and insurance and the electric and a phone bill for me, my girlfriend, and my 1-year-old son at the time, right? All of the sudden, over like a 5-year period, I noticed that I had 2 full-time jobs, right? And then it's like, hold on, what the fuck happened? Because now I'm splitting a duplex with somebody instead of renting a full-size house. So I've only got half as much property, but I'm working twice as hard for it. Where the fuck did this disconnect happen, man?
Yeah.
Like,
If I compare myself to my parents when they were my age, I believe I was a couple of years old. My brother was in the make, let's say. But both had a good job. My mom was always home on Wednesdays. My dad worked hard. They had their own house. They bought a home. Just nothing special. 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms, bathroom. Enough for a regular family.
Yeah.
A good, decent car where you can take the kids, take a couple of bags with you, and we went on vacation every summer. And now I'm happy that I get to pay my rent at the end of the month and have money left.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. Like they say Generation X and Z are lazy. Are they lazy or are they unrewarded and ungrateful because of it? You know what I mean? They have to work twice as hard to have half as much. So, I mean, maybe they have a reason to be pissed off. We've like I said, when we started populating these huge cities, we created a social vacuum that just turbocharged inflation. Because now we need to make enough money to support New York, LA, and all of these other cities on top of our local area. We
did start to build giant things like giant buildings, but that's more to show that you have a big dick.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. That's why they're so tall. It's just
my obelisk is bigger than yours.
Yeah,
and that was the whole idea of New York. Is real estate is the most expensive thing on an island, right? Because you have limited space. You have got a finite resource with the amount of square footage. So what can you do to populate more people into that area? You start going vertically, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, when your society is so tightly packed and so vertically inclined that you've got people living in 90-story high-rises, maybe it's time to rewind just a little bit. Let's not abandon technology or science and medicine and all of that, but maybe just break our governments back down to a local government level, right? Keep the local spending, keep the local spending budget in the area. You know what I mean? When your tax money stays in your area improves. Because when you keep the wealth of your community in the community. I'm sorry, guys, I got a delay, so I can't tell when there's a moment of silence.
That's all right. That happens to all of us from time to time. I talk to Joke Hagstrom from Sweden often, and we, there's a delay there often too. It happens. It's the best part about having this international community that we have.
And that is that's the positive thing about the internet, right?
Technology, man.
It is a marvelously abused tool, right? We have the wealth of human knowledge at our fingertips, and what do we get from it? 2 girls, 1 cup. I'm just saying, humanity took a hard left, dude. Like, the things that we used to abhor and used to be taboo are now mainstream. You know what I mean? Kink that was only whispered about in back rooms just 40 years ago is now published in the front of a fucking Target. You know, I mean,
which weird too, because like there's a part of me, and it's probably that youthful part of me that I can definitely recall from my psychedelic days in my 20s and everything, that, you know, if I was to be like early 20s in this today, I might have gotten hoodwinked too. I don't know, because just the idea of progress is such a hard thing to argue against, because it's such a meticulously developed, manufactured plot against us. And I really mean that. The word progress itself has been used since the beginning of the 20th century purposely in this way. The new progress, the new progressivism, the new this, the new governance, it's all leading towards this thing. It's been hijacked, of course.
Look what Democrats used to be, right? Look, I mean, just a couple of years ago, look what Democrats used to be. You look at Steppenwolf, for example. The most famous line in any song that I can recall: "You waste my coin, Sam, all you can to jail my fellow man." All right. I mean, that's just, it sings true. How much government money do we pay into the government for them to limit and attack us with it?
Yeah.
And that's why I said that, you know, those companies and, you know, the what is now giant government, they are the new frost giants. They are, you know, if we are the descendants of the gods, then they are the frost giants that we should beat.
Yeah.
Real quick on those like taboos kind of like being plastered in public everywhere. This is part of that great archaic revival that every, you know, hippie guru fucking controlled opposition person was bringing to the public in the West. And it's a part of every bit of our American rebellion over here has been manufactured in some part. And,
controlled opposition rebellion.
Absolutely. And it goes into music and movies and all that stuff. But just the idea of being bad instead of being good, it like literally flipped at some point in American culture, which is a hijacking for sure. However, there's this argument from the left side of the more left side of things, I would say, that as an individual progresses, they become more comfortable with themselves. They open up. They are more honest, right? As too would be a society and a culture of people in that fractal way of looking at things, where we're going to be more comfortable about, you know, admitting who we really are as a people and things like that. And I'm not saying there has to be truth on one side or the other, but it's good to include that angle, because that is at least what we're contending with, if not even a valid point, perhaps. You know what I mean? That we are evolving as a people the same way individuals evolve too, that we are more open. Everything is more open these days. Not to say that they're, you know, but limits are man-made, you know, and I'm not condoning any weird shit that went on in ancient history, but as a prime example, Bach Saga, right? It's all very taboo. A lot of it is very taboo. And if you look to other Aboriginal cultures in other parts of the world that had weird rites and things like that, we're going to feel the same way about these taboos. Yet we do have this archaic revival that's been pushed on us at the same time that we have this natural progression of being more open and more comfortable with ourselves and each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, look at Dane law. Look at the freedom of Dane law back in England, right? Mm-hmm. As long as you victimized no other person, their property or man, you were free to do whatever the fuck you wanted. Every dude in the community was to remain armed and police the area that he saw every day. Every man was deputized, basically. right?
Mhm.
And what they had was one of the most polite and civilized societies, and England could not figure out how that was happening with people that were so barbaric. You know, how did these marauders have such a civilized culture that literally, like, they tried to invade them, and because every man stays armed, they couldn't. So when they modeled the U.S. Constitution, they were like, hey, we saw this community back in England back in the day that was really successful, you know? So they take the have them all principles and apply them to the U.S. Constitution with the Second Amendment. You've got have them all, verse 38, you know? And basically we started out with something golden and noble and had an ultimately free society that learned from the mistakes of other past empires and societies. And if it was kept small, local, and decentralized, it would have remained that way. When we let power coagulate.
That new way came in, just like it always does. That youthful rebellion came in against the natural order.
It's the new Atlantis.
Yeah.
It's, you know, where
it fell from the inside out, supposedly, in most stories.
Yeah, because they strayed further and further away from the divine. You know, look at what's happening with the Western worlds. We are
subliminal culture walking.
Which is, you know, interesting. Just thank you for pointing that out real quick, just to jump in with this, that like we were talking earlier about how that possible physical traumatic event would have pushed us into those conditions. And, you know, even the Box Saga talks about this Atlantis being Altlantis, all land ice, being a time period of a great struggle, right? It's this horrible time period. So we hear it as is given to us through the Greek myths, right? Handed down by academia. And who is to blame? Humanity itself. Humanity fell from they strayed from their ways. Just like they do everything, they put it in our hands. The environment's our fault. Everything's our fault.
It's the entire moral of the Bible, bro.
It was actually
Everything
a natural event, perhaps. You know?
That's the entire moral. The entire moral of the Bible, though. Everything is your fault. It was your fault from the beginning that we're in these conditions, so live with it.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, you recently visited Bok Tower, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Bird Dog. Me and Bird Dog went there.
Excellent. Yep. Yeah, you gotta meet up with Narco, because you guys would have some fun. I think you guys would do some good episodes.
Have you seen Bok Tower ever in person?
Never in person, just lots of pictures. And I learned all about the history of it and the whole golden doors that are literally the story of Genesis right on them. And it's unreal. Yeah. And who the guy that built them, it's all connected to the box. It's nuts, man. And Narco Longo taught me that area of Florida, well, I'm sorry, maybe not that area, wherever, St. Petersburg, Florida, has the highest percentage of Finnish people. Mm-hmm. And it's like this perfect jetway through the Gulf Stream up to what used to be St. Petersburg, Finland, before it became Russia. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty interesting.
Look at the hill that Bok Tower is on. All right. First and foremost, when that dude came there were still Indians occupying that area. They had to evict them, right? So Bok Tower is built on the biggest hill in Florida. It's the highest point in Florida, right? Now, if you stand at the bottom of that hill and look up at it, it's a spiral mound, a really fucking huge spiral mound, bro. Standing at the base of that hill and looking up at it, it is the biggest earthwork creation I've ever seen. And you could follow, if you look at the aerial photograph of it and look at the elevation photograph, you could see where they carved areas out of it to make the botanical gardens and put the house and the mansion and all that. But as a whole, it's literally just one enormous spiral mound, right? Who used to build those? I'm just saying, in the 1920s, and then it was named a national landmark in, I think, like the 1920s, and then a state landmark in the 50s or something. So there's like no doubt that you are not allowed to even radar the ground there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But look at that tower. Look at all the aspects of it. And esoterically, I'm telling you that tower is energetically put there to keep something in the ground. Right?
Oh, that would be, that's an interesting idea. Especially since,
Trip.
Man.
take every myth about flowing water being used to contain things, about pink granite and different kinds of granite being used to contain things, gold. Okay, Bach Tower's got all of them. Then it's got the brass bells at the top. Then the brass bells were used to the old giants, the hill giants and shit. They were used to annoy them, right? So it's got a carry-on bell system with like a 12-ton bell on it, dude, the biggest one. There's like 2 people or 2 caretakers that are allowed inside the Bach Tower in every generation.
Wow.
So nobody really effing knows what's inside that thing except for a very couple people that are also like the masons that take care of it and shit. So I mean, there's a lot of mystery still around it when it's right there in plain sight. To this very day.
I'm gonna send you a link after we get off because there was an episode I did recently that we talked about this place in detail with tons of crazy connections. We even did like this interactive map where it showed the water levels way higher than they are now, and where Bach Tower would most likely still be out of the water and all that in case of a cataclysm or something. We made some interesting connections for sure.
The sea level can go up 120 feet, which I mean, if you gauge what would happen, let's say if a third of the ice started to melt, right, within over a 10-year period.
Yep.
And dude, that door. Hey, now here's the crazy fucking part about that door, because there's a conspiracy around it, right? Everything in the writing says that door used to have 32 panels on it, and each panel depicted a part of the creation. Count the fucking panels on that door and tell me there's 32 of them there. And they tell you the original door is not on the Bach Tower anymore. It's in a museum somewhere.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Or maybe
the ones that they show.
I don't know.
The two doors that they have on display, the one that's still on the tower is a replica, and the one that they have in a museum showing as a representation of the Bach Tower door is also a replica.
No shit.
26, well 30 if you count these like half ones.
I love how erroneous it is to do this too. Like if someone were to ask, like, what's so important about this Bach Tower that we have to have replicas, they'd be like, well, because of so and so, and the important, it was just wonderful and we have to preserve it. And everybody just goes, oh, okay, well, they take this seriously. It's so easy to just, well, I'm not interested in archaeology or any of these things, anthropology, so I'm sure this is just what they do with everything,
Yep, and that's
only we did.
We just have to accept in America, or actually around the world, because now it's global. The Smithsonian, right? They get these artifacts. Well, where are they? Storage locker XB32C, row 11, file 9 in that building over there, and it's like an underground warehouse just full of boxes, right? It's been in there for 121 years. It's been in the Smithsonian building and never been researched. There's Denisovan bones all over under there that have never had any genealogical testing on.
So, hey, random way to just swoop it back around to giants. What do you guys think about like the Great Pyramid and all these massive, intricate buildings from the past that we are mostly being directed towards we're mostly being directed in this community towards like electromagnetism and frequencies and vibration, lifting stone and things like that. That's where like I see a lot of the community being directed as far up the food chain, quote unquote, as like Randall Carlson, all these high-end people starting to slowly push those narratives. But if we have giants, but if we have giants,
I actually have a theory. I actually have a theory about that.
Okay.
We weren't always like mankind, or we weren't always as physical, as dense as we are now. We were once like true light bodies, and over time, as mankind fell, as the angels fell, because according to some beliefs, we are also part of the angelic hierarchy. We fell into matter, with this body being
corporeal form.
in the absolute
Into
state
density.
of matter. Yeah. But what if it wasn't just like us mankind who fell into density? What if it was like the rest too? Like the rest of the planet, rest of the earth, everything. So those giant blocks that weigh multiple tons now in this very dense 3D. What if those were a lot lighter as well? A lot less dense. That's
I
one
like that.
theory
When
I've been
you
playing.
look at the Big Bang, right? Look at the Big Bang and then think about gravity as a whole, right? The universe is forever expanding, right? Well, and this is my tie-in with that, right? You look at Tesla's visions and dreams and everything, and he saw everything on a both macro and micro scale, right? And when you think along those lines, you think to the lowest level of macro that a human can see, and that's an atom, right? Now, what does an atom look like? It's a neutron, a positive energy force in the middle with a bunch of electrons going around it. Well, on the macro, what does a solar system look like? It looks just like a fucking atom.
Right. Fractal again.
So, I mean, when you break that down and then the numbers, dude, when you get into the numbers, especially 26,000 and then 432, those two numbers come up so many different places when you start doing the math and the Euclidean geometry and all the shit around the pyramids, the sizes, the dimensions. It's absurd. Now, 26,000 is the amount of years that the Earth takes to make its full precessional orbit, right? But it breaks down into so many other things also, right? Then the number 32, I think what Tesla was able to do, I think he had a barrier in his brain that somehow took the wall between logic and creativity away. Like he had a very, very unique form of like Asperger's or something like that gave him almost like a permanent DMT drip, right?
Yeah.
Where he was able to put himself into states of meditation, and he admits this solely himself. He would put either static on or just electrical static and then just sit there and listen, right? And a lot of these things came to him through static. All right. Subliminal receivers in the mind, right? We're always told that static is just static, and that it is. It's just interference and it's out there. And, what if static is way more than that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's an age-old question, because what is ether too? What is space?
Right. Now, we can picture as humans infinity and then a total void or an abyss or a vacuum or lack thereof, right? But can we really, really fathom what that is?
No.
And I think our ancestors, because they were so much more connected to the earth and the stars and the sky and just their environment, period, right? Because they were so much more in tune and connected with it. They were able to see it in a way that we can't even grasp in modern society, right?
They saw how it all came together.
Tesla was able to breach that wall, right? He was able to see backwards and forwards, right? On the macro and the micro. So I think he was a very unique individual that only comes around once every couple thousand years. And I think we bastardized him for profit. I think that the greatest creations of mankind have been weaponized and kept secret by the government. There's some huge information coming out, and I don't know if you've seen it, Deep Share. I'm pretty sure you run in enough circles that you would know about this. But on the 6th of this month and the 12th of this month, there are supposed to be some information releases that come out that change the course of humanity on this very topic. Yes. Right. Do you know who Kim Iverson is?
I think I've heard the name before.
All right. I shared a podcast she did with this UFOologist. He's a doctor, right? Stephen Greer, right?
Yeah.
And now Stephen Greer is a tiptoey subject because of just who he is, right? And his history. But the guy has tugged on lines and filled out some FOIA requests and yoked some information out of the hands of the government and from whistleblowers that has basically brought Tesla's shit back to light. The fact that what we're seeing is all these UAPs is actually Tesla's black box technology that just never came out, right? Those missing 32 crates of information or whatever, however you want to word that, right? And you look at who the people were that were in the room, and there's two government officials, and I can't remember who the other one was, but one of them was Donald Trump, right? Whose relatives were right there in the room when they confiscated Tesla's shit.
Yes. No. His relative was responsible for the raid on Tesla's stuff.
Yes, yeah. But he also had firsthand grab assedness towards the goods and firsthand access to it.
Yep.
And was it Ford, the other person?
I want to say it might have been Henry Ford.
Either way, it was another politically influenced philanthropist, very, very famous figure. But you look at their family history after that, and all of the sudden this power just comes into their families, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Tesla's building Wardenclyffe in New York, right? Trump comes in years later, builds Trump Tower. I'm just saying, there's a lot of shit that if you really dig into the conspiracy theories, dude, like the Barron Trump stuff, I love some of it, dude, just because of its entertainment value, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the stuff that we get into the term conspiracy theory, right? The CIA literally created conspiracy theories to muddy the water about shit that started to come out before they wanted to announce it.
Yeah, they're the original Q.
Right, exactly. And that's a great example of it, right? What they would do is they would add a kernel of truth into something. Pizzagate is a perfect example. They put Jeffrey Epstein's story in the middle of this. Then they put all this other ridiculous detail around it that's absolute bupkis bullshit, right? But the Epstein stuff's in the middle of it. So when they debunk the absolute bullshit around it, they also just lump Epstein's story in too with the debunking and throw it off to the side. Right. And that's the way they just erase it for the next couple of years until somebody else brings it up, right? And this has been done with JFK's killing, with UFOs, with all of this shit, right? Yep. Now, we get to the agreements between Eisenhower and the Nords and some of the more fun conspiracies, right? Some of the new declassified shit that's come out fairly recently. That's some heavy shit, dude.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the Grenada Treaty.
Grenada Treaty or whatever.
This is all anecdotal. None of this is declassified. We're not, this is all third-party word of mouth. I'm not trying to deny it because I do think the only reason why I'm saying it's not proven is because people run with it whether it was aliens, and I honestly really think
chip away the bullshit around it, just like the Kennedy assassination and all the other shit. They took a real story, spun a whole bunch of bullshit around it, and threw it at us.
Absolutely,
because it started to leak out.
We're speaking the same language, absolutely.
So there is kernels of truth in it.
The thing is what year was that? That was what, 1940 something? I can't remember when the Treaty of Grenada. No, it was 57. Fuck.
Was it Eisenhower?
Yes. It was
Eisenhower. It would have been around 59, somewhere around there. 57, 59, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah. But
now,
anyway.
Look at Val Thorne.
What they were dealing with in that decade and the decade before and the decade before.
Look at Val Thorne, bro.
Vril technology.
Just the story of Val Thorne by itself, right? You look at the little kernels of truth that are inside of it, okay?
Yep.
Okay, so 2 police officers did bring a guy to the government, the CIA specifically, that they said they witnessed a 200-foot wide metallic craft land. This dude got out of it. He goes to the CIA, and the CIA kept him there for 3 years, right?
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't because it was bullshit. They don't do that. If it's a lunatic, they just commit him. You know what I mean? Like, if there was
I've looked
nothing.
into Valiant Thor, and we'll have to do, maybe we could do an episode on him. I'm sure there's enough to talk about because I never found any clear evidence that he existed at all. Just like a handshake, and like a car ride or something. Yeah, I can't remember what I saw, but yeah, the idea of him from Venus is like the bullshit thrown in. But who the fuck was this guy, and who did he represent? You know,
right now, and it's said by there's witness accounts, right? And in this, in the CIA documents, it's just witness accounts of people that came in contact with the dude that said there was something unique about him. That women just fell in love with him. Dudes wanted to be like him. He had this pheromonal presence that when he walked into a room, you instantly just looked at him, right? Like you didn't even have to know he walked in, and you knew somebody walked in, right?
So, I wonder if that's also like another side to the uncanny valley, like that idea.
He had the curious thing is he had no belly button. Right now, that's the one weird thing that 3 witness accounts and the CIA declassified documents allude to, right? But that's the crazy part. If it was total bullshit, why was the guy there for 3 years, dude? Why did they introduce him to 2 different presidents?
Oh, right, yeah, exactly. And I think that he was there. I really do, and I just think that what's being presented as Valiant Thor is like a crazy sci-fi alien story. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But
they did the conspiracy theory onion to it.
The Vril Society that's, you know, inexorably tied to the Third Reich and Nazis, that was the last of like over 100 different names these groups had used in that area that were researching ancient Germanic history and the occult and everything. But the Prussians kept outlawing it over and over again since like 1806 that was going on. So I mean, they tie Vril Society directly. They tie Vril Society to the Nazis, and they leave it at that. They talk about Himmler and they say, yep, they're all crazy into the occult. But this was going on in Germany for a long time. People looking into their history and then getting smashed by the Prussians and not allowed to do it. So I'm not trying to paint Nazis in a good light, but looking at the Germanic history and people trying to do it under these different names that they kept having to pop up with different names because they kept getting destroyed. It's really interesting. Because that ties into this UFO technology and the supposed Hanubi space, you know, Bell technology and stuff like that.
And now that's where it rings right back into the giants, right? Is we have another thing that's been right in front of our faces all this time, right? And it's like that. What is that old meme? Okay, so the CIA lied to us in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. The 2000s, the 2010s, but they just decided to stop.
Yeah.
You know, like
the good guys. Lou Elizondo is your best friend, everybody.
Exactly, dude. And like, all right.
I call him Uncle America.
Dude, what's the show of Skinwalker Ranch?
Oh,
right?
My God. It's worse than fucking Jersey Shore.
Dude, it gives me a fucking headache, right? It gives me a fucking headache.
That everyone's taken seriously in the UFO community.
You've literally got 2 CIA operatives. Their tech guy and Travis are both CIA ops, right?
Yeah.
This ranch, look at Project Blue Book, right? If Project Blue Book came out, I would have never known about this, right? But the show Project Blue Book comes out, that Dr. Alan Hynek's journals come out, and he basically finds, look at the last season of Project Blue Book, one of the last episodes is Skinwalker Ranch, and he fucking locates what's going on there. And it's literally just radio and wave technology that they're using to fuck with people. Picture HARP built into the side of a mountain, dude. They're using the natural dish that is the valley there, and they've created a focused antenna out of it.
Well,
that's a brilliant perspective.
Don't tell Firefay. It's one of her favorite shows. So
this is the problem. We come up against our own community a lot when we start talking about this. And, you know, a lot of people in another slightly different spectrum of this same, like kind of looking back on ourselves, looking back on the things that we've quote unquote uncovered or you know, fallen into. It's the same thing with questioning controlled opposition. You know, a lot of times this word black-pilled is now the new conspiracy theorist. Only conspiracy theorists use it on other conspiracy theorists. And it's everything becomes black-pilled, but at the same time, there's a lot to be said about it, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, if the CIA's been hiding all that stuff for all that time, what don't we know about that's been happening over the past 30 years? You know what I mean?
Oh, sure, yeah.
We've only got crap declassified as of, you know, a couple of years ago, but they're about to do a major, Stephen Greer's about to do this major dump because they've got a couple whistleblowers that came forward, right? And they're like Bob Lazar level whistleblowers. You know what I mean? Like people that had their hands into the reverse engineering and all this other shit. And he basically came out on Kim Iverson's show, and she's, you know, millions of followers. She used to be on The Hill and all kinds of other shit. She was a actual real deal journalist, right? He comes on her show. He comes on her show like a couple weeks ago and basically says, you know, we found out what they're doing, and these UFOs that you see, half of them are ours and half of them are ETVs, you know, and there's a difference between the extraterrestrial vehicles that we see and these black triangles and these black diamond-shaped crafts that are our creations, you know.
Can I be the black-pilled motherfucker here and respond to that real quick? I'm not trying to be negative, but I have to point out, ever since Stephen Greer started hawking around a little tiny mini skeleton as advertisements for his big upcoming serious documentary, claiming it was an alien and stuff like that, and then hoodwinked everybody and revealed at the very end of the documentary what he knew the whole time throughout his whole advertising campaign was not a fucking alien at all. That set the stage for his whole popularity, and for me, set the stage for everything that he has said since.
Bro, he's actually detailed why he did that. Do you know why he did that? Because he came straight out and said he needed to build an audience, because anybody like me and you, we can sit here and scream into the ether all day long. We get like what, a couple hundred listeners, a couple thousand watchers at best on a good video, you know.
I got you.
But when you create the base first, then you've got 1 million people that are already watching. You know what I mean?
My part two to this response is that a lot of questioning of alien disclosure is going on. And it looks to me like he's kind of doing that division thing now. Okay, well, some of it is that, totally, but the other stuff, you should totally still come out to the field with me and pay me $5,000.
Tying it back into the pyramids, that's the whole ancient aliens theory, right? That's
basically what he admits is that our government's had that technology and that it's not lost. We've had it all along. You know,
absolutely. And I think what he's also saying is that there's a fucking breakaway civilization from long ago that gave it to us. Yes. That is still in operation, and that's probably who we're talking. If there is a big scary boogeyman for real, it's an earlier form of us. It's probably this parent race that we're all talking about, and they're still around.
I'm an example here of how supposed giant humans helped build the pyramids.
We know these rulers that have been ruling for so long. They're the same personalities that we have today. They build themselves up bigger than they ever were, too.
No. So you want to know what my theory is on those pyramids? This is no joke, dude. On the pyramids, on all of it, right? It's survival shelters, bro. Darren Kuyu, the Longyu Caves, the pyramids, they're fucking survival shelters. There's always been a group of humanity, a little pocket that was able to follow the global precession cycle. They knew that every 25,900 or whatever the number is, we were going to have another set of cataclysms that if they created just the right shelter, they would be able to survive it, and they would use the people to do these shelters, right?
Wasn't it
And
in the Great Pyramids that there is a tunnel leading to the inner Earth?
I mean, yeah, people get mythological and crazy with it, but the facts are that there are absolutely tunnels under those pyramids that have military guards in front. Well, not right there, but you're not allowed in any of them. You know, there's plenty of stuff like that. And
No.
it's funny that no one comes out and says, well, Egypt, I mean, this is for, you know, international history. Come on, you're not allowed to do that. You know, no one cares to do that because they're all in fucking cahoots with it. They don't want it coming out until they're ready. You know, they want to go underground. They don't want this shit to come out until it's too late for us to do anything. God, this sounds horribly black-pilled.
dude, look at the Denver airport. Look at the Denver airport.
Dude, right? You can't.
We have bunkers. We've done it still to this day. We're using tax money to build bunkers for just this group of elites and the government to survive in case of a cataclysm. Meanwhile, the common man is sitting here naive to the whole thing for the most part. You know, they go to school and learn just enough to be a Google delivery or a Amazon delivery driver, and they get thrown out into the fucking world. And that's literally what we have going on right now, right? We have people purposely trying to indoctrinate people in schools against something that we've known Mesopotamia is not the oldest civilization for a very long time now.
Yeah,
okay?
way longer than anyone will admit.
You ask fucking Google what the oldest civilization is, and it still tells you Mesopotamia.
Yeah,
so
Sumer.
Look, I shared an article in the Tribe earlier today, and it's an archaeological find in Greece, right? Now, they're saying it may not be actual Homo sapiens that did it, but they found a stone circle structure and some other buildings and artifacts from a group of human descendants from 1.3 million years ago in Greece.
Whoa, now we're getting into some forbidden archaeology territory.
Did History with Kaylee? Didn't Kaylee just make a video on that?
No, she announced a video is coming out based on those finds in 2 days. She literally just made an announcement. She said major archaeological find or major video coming out in a couple days. Stay tuned or something like that. But
please send me that if you guys can.
She did the one, Stein. The one you're talking about is the one in France. There was a set of caves, I think, in France that they found the same thing where they took the stalactites and stalagmites in the cave and basically made rooms inside of it. And they date back to like an absurd time frame when you look at it. So yeah, were our cultures pyramid and ziggurat style cultures? No, we just made them in caves, bro. We used nature's landscape to create our homes, and over time people just forgot. You know, or government.
As we got further and further away from nature, you know, as we became more confident in ourselves, we had more time to think, and we had this desire to, I don't know, there's something in there about that, you know, like it was clearly a natural progression. And then
the explorers just landing here, dude, that part of the story really gets me. Not only are we doubting, let's say everybody says, oh, the ancient Indian stories are literally just tales. Okay. Then the Eddas and the Bible. Oh, that's just figurative tales. Fine.
Yeah,
all the skeletons in the mountains. All right. Then you get into the detailed reports from the first explorers. Some of the most trusted people in our history that were literally naming countries after and basing their finds and historical discoveries, you know, like all based around them. And we have to say, okay, but we have to discount this part of their story because that was just fantasy.
Right.
Are you fucking serious? You know what I mean? Like, okay, I can discount maybe one aspect of it, but just like with the conspiracy theories, they take one kernel of truth, wrap a whole bunch of bullshit around it and go, look, now it's all fake.
Well, they also do something a little bit more complex than that as well sometimes, where they take our history and our spirituality and they kind of intertwine them and wrap them together. so that when we come back from, say, a psychedelic experience or, a near-death experience or whatever, an ineffable perturbation of consciousness, we come back from that, a lot of us get struck with this need to look into it. What the hell was that, And we find ourselves in these kind of communities, right? We find ourselves reading books about fairies and mythological creatures and things like that because of the way these folklore stories and mythologies have been handed down to us is not the original way they were told. And even anthropologists from the 1700s took these stories as prehistory. They didn't take them as, just weird magical spiritual things, that was put there specifically, it looks like, in the early to mid 1800s and further into European literature and academia with folklore. Portal becoming more than just a seafaring term for porthole. It became this magical doorway along with all the elves.
In the 13 and 1400s, we have this twist of every history at one time. There's this really famous king. He has a book named after him. What's his name? The King James Bible.
That guy.
Yeah, this guy. He did. He. How do I word this? This guy had just about every major religion on the planet rewritten through a Christian lens in his lifespan, and had his versions of those books replacing some of the ancient texts. And it wasn't until after he died and after shit went down that we start finding caves and stuff with some of the old material still back in it, right? Like the Dead Sea Scrolls. So, they've taken not just one religion, but literally all of them and twisted them to a couple distinct rulers' points of view in order for them to optimally profit off of it.
And obfuscate this coming catastrophe, possibly.
Yes. Now,
to keep us occupied, keep us just where they want us.
What happens if humans do run into their true history and find out why? Let's say we finally look back and go, okay, the giants were real. Cool. Where'd they go? Oh, they were destroyed in a flood 26,900 years ago. Oh, well, what caused it? Global precession. When does that happen again? Right now.
Soon.
So, do you see the dilemma with them coming out with the information? You know what I mean?
Yeah, even the people, this is where we could get into, we probably don't have time, but for black hats versus white hats, which I think is very much an illusion in a lot of ways. It's a uniparty. Black hats for the most part, but it's like possibly a group, because we're all one family. I do believe that. And I think they know that too, and there's just a part of the family that wants to tell everybody what the fuck is going on. And I don't think, but even they know that they can't just fucking come out with it. They're just gonna. But that's where the line gets blurred, right? Because even that's the weird part about it. It's slow leaking to the public. Maybe there is something to do with the karma, but maybe it's not some evil magical thing. Maybe they really do feel like, well, we're carrying on the human species in the best way we know. And unfortunately, the many, it's not going to work for the many. So there's too many.
That's the shadow crown theory.
I'm giving them too much credit here, but you know what I mean? It's
that's the shadow crown theory.
At least we can do is try to tell them in some way, so it'll relieve some heaviness off our souls. In a way, that revelation of method kind of does add up with natural guilt.
And that's that. Like I said, that's the shadow crown theory, right? There is a group that says, for the betterment of mankind, we have to build these ultimate shelters to make sure that in a cataclysm, some of humanity survives. Who gets to pick that humanity? Well, it's us, dude.
Unfortunately, that's because and the question is always who else. Unfortunately, who came up with it probably is going to do the choosing.
And that's it. They're going to pick a couple doctors, a couple scientific minds, a couple engineers, a couple brick masons, and they're going to start all over again, right? And that's what we see with Year Zero. That's what we see with so many of these stopping points in human history, stopping points and rewrites.
Yeah, man. Yeah, all to keep it quiet until it's starting to feel that way. This is getting into nightmarish territory here.
it's a full circle thing, dude. You know what I mean? Like if one part of it comes out, the other part has to come out, but then it all comes out like a flood. And they're trying to drip feed it to us because, well, if people found out all at one time, the Vatican would collapse. It's one tied into the world's biggest banking system that would collapse, you know? So there's a lot of vested interest in not letting it all come out at once and even obfuscating the bits of it that do.
Yeah, and obviously it's like nefariousness is built into this, even if, dare I say, at the very end of the day, they're trying to preserve humanity in some way. Like, I don't, where do you we're getting way off topic here, but where do you think AI and transhumanism fits into that? If that's, I mean, maybe it's not coming for a long time. Maybe it's our great grandkids.
I think AI is a shitty idea of mankind that's not going to contribute hardly anything because we use it for the wrong purposes. It has the ability, like the internet, to be one of the greatest tools of humanity, yet we're using it to create fake pictures of Donald Trump running from the cops. You know what I mean? It's fucking absurd.
Yeah, I guess what I was suggesting is that like the transhumanism conspiracy agenda, whatever, it almost runs like not contradictory to what we've been talking about this like cataclysm and hiding away in their little caves and shit and letting us all die. They kind of run like they're just in different fields. It feels like
almost like parallel. Yeah,
parallel, but they don't seem to.
They don't intersect at any point. That's the thing.
How do they align? How does the elites are doing this, but they're also doing?
That's why I don't think it does. I don't think it does at all. I think the AI is just a human mistake, bro. I think that's just something that we're going to have to look back at in hindsight and go, fuck. Yeah. I guess we shouldn't do that again, right? And I mean, it's one of those things that okay, the government has we're sitting here going, why isn't humanity using it for this, and this when we're only using it for this? Well, the government already is. Trust me, bro. If you thought about it, so did they. You know what I mean? Like that's one of those things that for every nefarious purpose, for every good purpose that we could use it for, first they find 10 nefarious ones. And it's like the weaponization of everything that's ever been created in humanity. You know, our first instinct is how do we kill people with it? How do we defend ourselves with it? How can we make it an offensive weapon? You know, when we should go, how can we make it an ultimate resource so that humans don't need to depend on all these other things?
Yep. And that goes back again to that possibility of an original cataclysm that gave us this ultimate fear mindset where it's like everybody immediately turned into the Walking Dead and everybody was fucking guarding their little tiny supply. And it just, that was the deepest mentality that spread into humanity. And instead of processing it like many of us are trying to do through generational trauma healing and all kinds of hippy dippy sounding shit that is fucking legit. A lot of these power hungry motherfuckers, these parasitic people, they don't want to do the work. That's the whole point of that kind of personality, right? They don't want to go in there and do the work and heal those wounds that stretch back probably before them. They want to just get their fucking fix and get rich and deal with it, you know?
Well, just imagine if the war machine grinds to a halt, right? They don't have their little black budgets that they can seep money out of and put into different places, right? And that's the ultimate, like we got into that before, the ultimate downfall of the actual government is that it started out as a good idea, you know, to set up a few social systems and a set of rules and keep it at that and limit it. But once people got the power to vote themselves more power, it just went all downhill from there, right? Now you've got so many different federal programs that they can seep little bits of money out of, you know, each one, that they can create this huge black book budget that is now almost completely invisible to a lot of people. And Eisenhower said, this military industrial complex has killed America. That's it. It's done. You know, start packing your chips, dude. It's over with. Yeah. So the fall of the American empire, well, it's never been an empire. It was a republic. Maybe that's what's coming next. And when that happens, maybe we'll have some kind of reform where we break back into our history again.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
Well, that's why I say that it's the new Atlantis. America is a good example of Atlantis, of the fall of Atlantis.
The first name for America.
Amaruka?
Atala. Atla.
Yeah, Atlas. Yeah.
Right. And then I was running across some information the other day, and it was like a triangle of shit that all hit me at one time. Right. Atlantis, the first name for America being Atla, King Atlas. And then I ran across one of Heimdall's mother's names is Atla, Atla. Right.
Oh.
And all of his mothers were giantesses that represented different oceans.
And you have the Greek. What is it? Is he a god? What is he? The
Atlas, a Titan. Atlas was a Titan, wasn't he?
Yeah. Who literally, holds up the world. That's why there is this this Atlas bow, like on the base of your neck.
Deep Share asked something earlier about the Titans, right? And I started to break into that, right? In Greek mythology, you have the Titans. Kronos is killed by his 3 sons, right? In Norse mythology, you have Bor, who is also killed by his 3 sons. Now, they were so large that the sons had to ambush them, and all 3 of them still had a hard time killing this thing, right? I say thing because it wasn't human, and it wasn't one of them. Because if something is that big that it takes 3, and what we would look at our gods, Odin, as a giant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now, if it took a giant, 3 giants to take down this giant with an ambush, how big were the Titans? And then we got into that 4-foot footprint, right?
Yeah. That is really cool. I mean, I would gladly leave it on the table for now. Yeah.
Look at the Ice Age. Everything was bigger because cold climate creates bigger bodies, right?
True.
Now, when humans went through the Ice Age and came out of it just over 25,000 years ago, we were probably pretty fucking big, dude. We had the Denisovans and shit running around at that point. Really big mother effers, right? Then now we can look at human population and tell that there's populations on Earth that have up to 6% Denisovan DNA still.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So these guys were in our recent history. Within the last 20,000 years, they were living right alongside and breeding into human communities. So, I mean, we do have giants really close to us. But what were before them? What were before them? That's where the Tales of the Titans come in, And I think the last bit of them probably died off at the Ice Age. And, sometime around the end of the Ice Age, sometime around the Younger Dryas, we had the dying off of some more giants, what we call our gods. You know what I mean? The old gods. They're around the Younger Dryas period, or sometime a little after, the last bits of them died off, with leaving at the Dark Ages the last few pockets of them, And we get into modern America and we see a few weird cases, right? Like Benjamin Buckland. The dude's 8 foot something, and not like Robert Wadlow 8 foot something, where he was like gangly and long, and like Buckland was a soldier and a cop in his community. He was described as just being a massive guy, 8 foot 4 inches or 8 foot 7 inches, whatever his height was. There's a bunch of different tales about it, but it's always over 8 feet. Wow. But we've got him like written into colonial America in the 1600s. The Lovelock Caves, that giant. We've gone into there and pulled out red hair, and there's Indian tribes that have those red hairs braided into their ceremonial garments and whatnot.
Here, that Roberts dude, right?
Robert Wadlow.
That's the guy that he died at like 27 years old or something like that.
Yeah, no, just look at him, like he's size and a half of the guy standing next to him.
That's his dad, by the way.
That's his dad.
That's his dad standing next to him in that picture.
Oh Jesus, he's like a size and a half.
Yeah,
and this isn't the guy that you were talking about. This is the guy that was like gangly and long. You're talking about this
He's the one that's got a gene disorder. Yeah, but see, Robert Wadlow was luckily born in a time where we had cameras, right? If Benjamin Buckland had been around, we had cameras. I'm sure there'd be pictures of that dude because like everybody would have took pictures of him.
Right? Yeah, and they all would have been confiscated.
Like the Asian, like the Japanese giant, right? The Japanese battle giant. I know you've seen the debunking video of that, right? Where they show the guy in the production. Like there's the video from ancient Japan of the giant marching with the army parade.
Oh, and he's it's from a movie,
tall. But they said that it came out of a movie, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it was filmed and it came out of a movie. But look at the body of that thing. Who was marching that down the street? You know what I mean? There
was no technology back then. Well, what year was that movie supposedly from?
And now, see, there's the crazy thing about it, because the original video and then the debunking videos, when you overlay them, don't match. They're very, very similar. They're very similar.
Watch it again now, because that was creepy. Obviously, it's like, whoa, this dude's fucking huge. He's like 10 feet tall.
Look at the traps on him. You know what I mean? Like you look at the traps, like holy shit, like that dude could freaking military press a Buick.
And honestly, those are like the Sasquatch encounters that the friggin' hunters talk about. They're like, this thing was bigger than you can even imagine. I say now, 10 to 12 feet, and you picture a basketball hoop or something, but you're not picturing a being.
That's what I was going to say about that. The cold weather producing bigger bodies. Look at the hairy man sightings, the giant hairy man sightings from Alaska and Canada. He's 12 to 15 feet tall. But you look at the Sasquatch sightings from down in Central America and in America, and they're like 8 feet.
Right, 8 to 10.
It's a comparative realization right there, just in that. You take the cold weather bodies and they're bigger.
Yeah, like the Yeti or the Yeti. Like that legend all over Nepal and everywhere else is much larger than what we would consider like Sasquatch in the state, or the skunk ape down in the south, you know. That's like 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet. But so like what do we like this whole, we've been talking for 2 hours and we got a little off track, but for the most part it sounds like we're still talking about many different hominids. We're not talking about, like, we're bringing our mythology back down to earth, and we're kind of returning our stolen history back to us, away from these people that have convinced us all that it's all
ancient aliens is the biggest curse of humanity. If they renamed ancient aliens the old gods, I would 100% agree with that show, right?
Yeah,
but because they phrase it like these things came from outer space. Okay, we have been visited, but most of the creations here on Earth, we can look in our religious text and, I mean, come on, let's just take them a tenth serious. You know what I mean? We lived alongside of some bigger beings. They built megalithic structures or were used as slaves in doing so. Whether what area you were living in, you might get a different story. The Native Americans, when they're telling about it, these things were already here, and they had these vast stone cities built. Then you look at like the Nahulo, the Nashville, right? The Choctaw and Chickasaw, they talk about the Nahulo, and they say some of those buildings in Nashville weren't built in the colonial era. You see these big ass Roman Greco style buildings in Nashville, Tennessee, right? They say those were already there. They just unburied them, bro. They literally unburied them and rebuilt them. So
that's the whole thing, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of detail to it that it's like, okay, it's been staring us in the face this whole time, and maybe it is true.
Yeah, now, that's even getting into like the World's Fairs that took place in the 1800s, and it's unfortunately for like a part 4 or something. But sorry we got a little off track from the Giants. But
part 4, part 5, we're gonna have to do a lot of parts because Burdock wants.
We have other people that
want to. I know that I got a guy that
I'd
love to bring Narco on sometime with us to talk, because I mean he's down in Florida and he's got a whole great ton of research on this, great perspective on this stuff. So
I want Sarcastic to come in on the next one, dude, because I think Sark would have a lot to add into this. I really do.
Who's
He
that?
is sarcastic
we're gonna-
warlock.
Cool.
He's in the chat at the moment.
Nice.
So, dude,
Shout
sarcastic
out.
warlock and Burdock, and you and me on Giants. That's gonna be a hell of a show.
Now, you know, I think it's really funny that this is information that's been out there, and this is not like just new findings. You know what I mean? This is information that's been in our fucking faces for hundreds of years, dude, a millennia or more. As this cycle of humanity is involved, we've had it right there in our faces the whole time.
Yeah, I often like to say nothing's hidden because honestly, it's just that we haven't been looking. And sure, yeah, there's been plenty of distraction that distracted a lot of generations, just not ours.
It's all
But then again,
relative.
I can't say, yeah, there was a few flukes from earlier generations, from the boomers and so on, that, you know, would say a lot of crazy shit, but they'd all be thought of as crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah. Again, this rebellion, though, has been controlled, so it's been coming out on purpose.
it's
You guys
all
were talking
relative.
about that Japanese giant supposedly, although I believe this is
Tokarian,
debunked as
yeah.
well.
Ooh, what do you
There
mean?
was also a Dutch one, like this guy. This is supposedly in the Netherlands. I mean, this is definitely
I've seen this is AI.
Northern Europe.
This is literally so.
Yeah.
The fourth
This is
one or
AI.
third one down, the black and white with the big guy with the long.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Crowd. That is AI right there. That's
Oh.
like Mid-Journey AI.
Bro,
But
to
just-
jump back to that 18-footer from Texas, they found a 9-foot sword buried with that fucker.
Jesus Christ,
Dude,
That's-
imagine a
Nobility,
9-foot.
because nobody could mess with them.
Bro, he just swing his arm. Think about the reach he would have, and then a 9-foot sword on top of it. Bro, he could cleave 8 people in half at one time.
It's nuts.
Just with one swing. You know what I mean? Just 8 bodies just boom, 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 boom. Like, how
Thank
do
you,
you
Burdock,
go into
for
a
that
battle against
donation.
something like that?
Exactly. You know, I've been looking at a lot of artwork that kind of echoes this same thing, these battles against like one army or another, you know, and a lot of times one army is depicted as much larger human beings, right? Like almost gigantic, even like
Almost all of the
pictures of
biblical ones.
Canaanites. I've had these great pictures of or paintings of Canaanites and their armies like coming in like these gigantic warriors, these giants basically. And of course, the mainstream historians would just say this was ego and this was how they would portray themselves, or how further writers in time would just, you know, aggrandize the history and make it more intense and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot more literal history to that than
Yes.
just over exaggeration, you know?
That's why I got so deep into I wanted to keep it mainly to the Native Americans, but when I got into the Eddas that I've read them 4 or 5 times before back to back in a couple different versions.
Have you read the Aura Linda book? Sorry to cut in like that.
No.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
But
Go ahead.
jump back to that in a minute. Keep that on a back tab. But
Yes.
the Eddas, the last time I broke into it, I didn't really notice how much giant is in the Eddas until I really, really started to look at it and thought about it. And it's like, okay, Odin, Thor, Loki, all of these are hybrid descendants coming down, right? And further until you get to the point where you have Tacitus writing about it, and he speaks of Odin and them in a present tense and Tyr's grandchildren in a present tense. So basically he says Tacitus in the writing of Germania said that the 3 main branches of the Germanic tribes were led by the 3 grandchildren of Manus. Manus was the son of Tiwaz, right? So now you've got Tiwaz's grandkids as the 3 tribal heads, right? and it's like the Ingveones, and we have the Ingwas rune, and then the two other tribes have really hard to pronounce names. But that was a literal telling. You know what I mean? And he related Odin to Hermes and stuff like that. But I mean, when you look at it, he was speaking about it in a present tense. He wasn't saying this happened in the past. He was saying they had these gods in the past, but these ones are still here. So, right. I mean, when you look at the tenses that he uses in his writing, I think a lot of people discount that when that is a very, very legitimately literal detail in his writing, you know? So he's looking at something that he's seeing and describing it, something that is still happening, right? And this is at the time that the Etruscans were just wiped out by the Romans, their own predecessor. I mean, they literally were the ancestral civilization to the Romans, who forgot them for a couple hundred years for some reason, and then they were like, oh shit, who's that group just north of us? Let's take them out. Yeah. And it's like, wow, you know, just like a total genocide on your ancestors. How about that? You know, and how many times has that happened through humanity, that because of some weather event we got separated from a group that we were related to just on the other side of a mountain range, and then all of a sudden we're clashing and going to war with them, and we don't know who the hell they are.
Right.
4 generations later.
And that's where this word alien comes from, man, because we've been alien to each other so many times in the past. And honestly, that's what I take from the Nephilim tale as well. It's like, you know, we have these God-fearing people, the sons of God, and then we have these heathens that are not God's children, that don't worship God, right?
They were born of the earth.
Right. Giants.
I'm just saying, humans came from the gods. We were God's creation. Yes. We were modeled after the gods. We were not of the gods. No. We were of the gods. And that's where the severed line is. And
but that's what it says in the Bible too, right?
But real quick,
man in his own image.
This real quick though, this is where they twist the spiritual side and the history, because what comes to mind to most Christians and most people when you hear God, is it a historical person or is it a spiritual thing that's going to keep you less afraid of death?
Well, let's run backwards and look at where it stemmed from and EL in the Phoenicians.
Well, also, I mean, I want to say that the root language in Bach Saga points to God being pronounced more like gut, and it meaning the heart in the stomach, the gut being your intention, your will, that deeper part of yourself. So it falls in line with the more esoteric understanding of what God would be on the spiritual side of things, that these gods walked among us, these ones that were one with themselves, these mystics. And of course, everywhere these types of people pop up in history, they're considered this way. Not only are they considered angelic and light beings and things like that, but they're also considered the ones that brought the magic with them, the ones that brought the knowledge of the skies with them and things like that.
Yeah, well, you know, I have another interesting connection. You ever heard the Yiddish term oy vey?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What's the
root of this?
You know what it means, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, God.
Okay. All right. So,
all right. Yeah. Vey, Odin's brother. Vey.
Yeah.
Odin's brother.
Filia Vey.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. That's such a cool connection.
Odin, Vili, and Vey. Vey was Odin's brother, and Vey is the term they use for God. I'm just putting that out there.
I never thought of that. And it was right there. Yeah.
interesting how Yiddish would be connected to a Scandinavian situation. It's so cool.
But it's not. It's
very...
not when you look at it locally, dude. When you look at the geography of it, it's really not. There's an area that's separated by a couple mountains, right? Over where the Phoenicians were living. Just over those mountains, the Slavic people were living for thousands of years, and they had no idea they were even fucking there.
Yeah. So not geographically, but politically, in the political climate of what Germanic history would be versus what Jewish history is. And I love looking at these old maps that show Scythopolis in the old Israel maps. I don't know, is it still there? Scythopolis in Israel? I'm not sure if it's still there or not, but it's definitely on the old maps. These Scythians, this is where all these different peoples come together, where it's where those Vril societies were looking into their own history before it was all demonized by Nazism.
Before we sign off, I do want to say
of Israel.
I can see the end nearing here because Stein's yawning beyond belief. But it's really late there.
It's pretty late here too.
But the article that I just wrote, Who is Balder? I tied all of that together, right?
That's awesome.
And I think if take a look at that one, dude, it'll ring a couple bells for you where you look at it with the stuff you're studying now. I think that would be a really decent read for you, and some of the sourcing that I put in that article, I think you would get a lot of benefit from.
We got it. Yeah, we definitely have to check this stuff out more. I want to tell you about, not right now because there's no time, but the Bach saga also includes this whole concept of Solbach and Balder. It's almost like the Trinity, and I wonder if we could connect the research. So we'll have to get into that at some point.
All right. Yeah. Well, I kind of did connect some dots in there too with Balder and Jesus and the tentative connection there also.
Oh, cool.
All right. There's a lot of tie-in in that article.
That's cool. That's very interesting.
Is Balder.
I posted it in the private chat. There are two links in there. One is to the article about the Greek civilization, and then the direct link to Josh is Substack.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I'll definitely be checking these out. But it is getting late. I gotta kind of get going, gentlemen. But this was really awesome to talk with you guys again.
Yeah, what it starts to say, check out a book called Atlantis Eddas in the Bible from 1926.
Isn't that the one they based what they call the Atlantic religion on? It's basically like a set of Eddas that's written around all the Atlantic cultures from the Isle of Man and all of that.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I know that there's one about, it's not the Edda, but it's the Kalevala in Egypt. And that's another interesting perspective that we could get into.
You say Kali?
The Kalevala from Finland. Right? Or I don't know. Am I pronouncing it wrong? I'm not scared.
No, it's just that word Kali and how many different ways that ties into.
Oh yeah, Kali is part of the root language. And the Eeyore Bach has tied that in with a lot of stuff too. It's really
this book is available on books.google, and it is available on Amazon and Goodreads. It's pretty widely available.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Yeah, hey, it's been a pleasure, brothers. It has
so many things. Christ is Balder. Yeah.
I'm not even going to get into that because we don't have the time. That's another 2-hour show, bro. That is it.
Yeah, we definitely went the distance, so we can do it again for sure. We'll have to.
I mean, there's enough in this for a part 4, part 5, part 6, where we just go all together.
Yeah, it's good to get back together and share ideas,
The Christ is Balder ties back into the Balder is EL and Baal is EL. So, I mean, awesome. It's literally the same God all in one circle, dude.
Makes sense to me.
It's just different names. Different names for the same God.
Yep, that's always how it goes usually.
So stay true to your faith. Keep the old gods alive. and come visit us in the tribe, man. We'll have some of these chats. We draw them out all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just today we got into some stuff and right as fire.
Topics that we try to keep out of the tribe sometimes, but we will discuss in certain areas as symbology because it gets to be a really touchy subject.
Yeah.
And I mean, but those are subjects that's need to be discussed.
Somebody needs to talk about them. I agree.
And luckily people are able to keep it civil. So
yeah.
But
yeah, we had a tasteful conversation about conspiracies.
Among other things. Yeah, but this was a awesome show, guys. This was
Deep Share, for all the people in the tribe that aren't aware and some of our viewers, where can they find you, man?
Yeah, and please call me Andy, man.
Andy, sorry.
You can find me at the Deep Share on social media, on Instagram and Twitter. On Twitter, I'm usually on there yelling about whatever UFO bullshit the government's releasing and leading us on with. But yeah, you can find my podcast on all the major podcast platforms, and I'm on YouTube and Odyssey. So yeah, come check me out.
Right on, man.
Thanks again for having me. This was awesome. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's been great having you. I have your links in the description already, of course. I make sure to do that before every show.
Thanks.
Josh, for the people who don't know yet, and for those people, under what rock have you been living? But where can the good people find you?
Substack. I'm on Substack. I'm on Twitter. Twitter, I'm Child of Ash 420 in a bunch of different places. J. Ash Odinson. I'm writing a book on. It's a fiction, but it's got a lot of fact base to it, called The Shadow Crown. That should be coming out this summer. And
nice.
I do a lot of really touchy subject, fact-based conspiracy stuff on Substack, and a lot of esoteric stuff and just religious tie-over stuff, how they have different intersectional crossroads for basically just about every planetary religion.
Yeah, I've been reading your Substack. It's good stuff. But you can find all of that, of course, also on the Greyhorn Pagans website, www.greyhornpagans.com, where you can find every podcast we ever did, every Substack article, either written by Josh, by Raven, or by myself and Firefay. We recently started a Substack as well.
It is a new medium.
It's a good medium for sure.
With the stuff that they've just done with notes and all of that new stuff too, where they're like tying more of a social media aspect into it, it's making it a lot more user friendly, and Substack is getting big fast. So
I'm gonna have to check it out too, because I wanted to kind of start some sort of blog a long time ago instead of just tweeting everything.
Excellent way to do it, bro. You can add video to it too.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Substack would be a great way to do that. Indeed, I will. Well, once I can, I'll send you a invite link so that you can get started right away. But for now, thank you, everyone who has joined us. Thank you to Bird.
Drop a like, subscribe.
Yeah, thank
Share
you for
this video.
Thank you to Burdock for the donation. Thank you to Sarcastic Warlock for the donation. They are greatly appreciated.
Thank you guys. You're awesome.
This is all indie. This is all independent. This is all,
Yeah,
we do it because we love it.
Yes.
So everything
if you want to sponsor us, we need you to go to Ko-Fi, drop $1, share it. If you can't drop any money, just share it. Share the video.
Yeah, share, like, subscribe, ring that bell, comment, whatever else is there to shill. How do all the good YouTubers, the bread tubers do that? I believe I got it covered. So
Yeah. If I hadn't broke my coffee mug, I'd be displaying my Tribe of the Greyhorn Pagans coffee mug tonight, dude. But
dude, you
it
broke
got broken in a washing accident.
Oh man, that's such a shame. Well,
I'll order a new one anyways.
luckily there is enough merchandise to for everyone. greyhornpagans.creator-spring.com, or just simply go to our website where there is a direct link to it. We have some awesome stuff. Now I really think I'm done shilling everything. Sarcastic will be proud of me. I'm almost like part of the how does he call it again? Like the tribe of people with the little hats and all. But yeah, thank you everyone. This has been absolutely amazing. Can't wait for part 4, part 5, part 6. This is gonna be. I think we're gonna
Stay
draw
tuned
this
for
out.
part 4. And Deep Share, dude, line up with me. I'll come onto your channel or something, dude, and we'll do something on the Phoenicians and Baldur's tie-in and all of that stuff.
Absolutely, man. It'll be a blast. Yeah, everybody
So
come follow me on my
Andy,
page.
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine, man.
I
Yeah,
see
come
the
over to
sign
my-
behind you, bro. It's subliminal.
That's totally cool, man. Yeah, that's fine. Get the word, get the name out, right? Yeah. But yeah, everybody come over and follow me on YouTube too. And yeah, we'll get some good fucking conversations going over there.
Oh
For
yeah, man.
sure. All right. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right. Thank you, everybody. It's been a blast. And we will talk to you next time all. Thank you. See ya.